everyone, my name is Liz Moore.
I'm Delaney.
And we're both student engagement coordinators here at the Office of Sustainability at Gonzaga. And welcome to our first workshop about Sourdough Bread Starter.
So Sourdough Bread Starter became a huge quarantine trend in the last 10 months or so. And so we thought we'd put on a little workshop of how to start your own starter and then show you some recipes to make with that starter.
And so there's only a few ingredients that you really need, and it's perfect for on-campus and off-campus students, and also just anyone watching, because you make your own bread, or there's so many different recipes including pancakes. But enough of that, we're going to talk about some ingredients that are important. So first you're going to need some flour. There's so many different types you can use, and a mason jar or a bowl that you can cover, and we're going to need some water for today.
Yeah, so what's also really great about a sourdough starter is you can use ingredients from local grain farmers in your area or even in your state. So here in Spokane, we have a few awesome local grain growers. We have Joseph's Granary from Colfax, Washington. They're really great about creating regenerative agriculture, so they put more nutrients back into the land so that it can regenerate years and years ahead to help combat climate change. And then we also have Shepherd's Granary, which is also really great about regenerative agriculture. And so those are two ones in our area that you can look into. I know Main Market Co-op sells flour from Shepherd's Granary. There's a lot of stores in the local area where you can get their flours.
I know that there's a few in California and in other states too, so don't be afraid to check it out in your local area, even if you're not in Spokane. So let's get started with our recipe then. Okay, so today we're going to be using unbleached all-purpose flour, and so we're going to put about 3 tablespoons of flour into. It looks good.
And you can use really any flour you want. We're using all-purpose flour because that's the most common one in households that you might have on hand.
And now with all the flour in our mason jar, we're now going to add about 3 tablespoons of water. So the ratio is just 40 grams to 40 grams, which is about 3 tablespoons.
And this is called full hydration. So when your sourdough starter is equal parts water, equal parts flour.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. Well, now I'm just going to mix it up.
You want it to be pretty, relatively smooth, kind of like pancake batter consistency. And you can kind of just keep mixing until all the bumps or clumps of flour are smoother and kind of fully mixed in there. And yeah.
What do you think?
I think it looks pretty good.
Oh, great. And the water's been fully mixed. Right here. Now with the starter, we're just going to cover it with the lid, but if you're making it in a bowl or something, you can just cover it with like a towel. But yeah, just covering it, and we're going to let it rise and do its thing, because in a few days it's going to start bubbling, and that's when you know you need to feed it again. So every single day, whenever you think about it, pretty much just stir it like once or twice to keep the bacteria moving. And when you start seeing bubbles form, that's when you know it's ready to feed it again.
In about 5 days to a week, you should have a fully established starter. So that's a relative time frame that you can look for when you're establishing your starter at home.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing a recipe with all the steps at the end of the video. So if you want, you can screenshot that and make your own, or share it with your friends. It's always good to have more bread, right?
Yeah. After you see the bubbles from fermenting for 5 days to a week, you're going to start feeding it in equal parts. So you can do 3 tablespoons of flour and then 3 tablespoons of water, and then you mix it all together, and then you wait until the next day to feed it. Keep in mind, you need to feed it at the same time every day, because how the fermenting process in a starter works is that the bacteria is fermenting at certain times of the day once it's fed. So you need to keep up that consistency of feeding your starter. I feed my starter in the morning when I wake up. It's basically part of my morning routine.
But you can add as much flour and water as you want, as long as it's equal parts. But the more you add, the more starter you'll have and more opportunity you'll have to make bread or whatever you're trying to do with your starter.
If you skip a day of feeding or know you're going to be out of town, you can put your starter in the fridge. You can skip a day or two of feeding. It will start to collect a little layer of water, but don't be alarmed by that. Just like mix it in and you should be fine. When the next time you feed it, you should be fine.
After 5 days to a week, and when you see bubbling, you can remove some of the starter, and that's what you can use to make pancakes. And you can remove pretty much whatever you want. It's recommended to remove like 80%, but it's whatever you feel is necessary. Like if you're not going to use it, I would just wait and just feed it. But if it's like starting to overflow or whatever, then I'd probably remove more than just like a little bit. But yeah, so maybe have 2 jars.
Yeah, but just make sure to feed your starter after you've poured some of it into your discard jar. There's another perk to making your own bread is it reduces your own carbon footprint, so you're not buying it from someone else, generally a big corporation that emits a lot of CO2. And it's just kind of a fun way to do a new thing and also help the planet by making something of your own.
And it has all healthy ingredients because you know exactly what's going into your bread. Thanks for watching!
Stay tuned to learn how to make a recipe with your sourdough starter.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Now after doing the starter, we're going to show you guys a cool new recipe.
And the recipe that we're going to show you how to make with your sourdough starter is dinner rolls. Very simple ingredients that you probably have around your home. But the first one is your sourdough starter. That's Delilah. Then all-purpose flour, like we had used last time with sourdough starter. It's a very common flour in your house that I'm sure you have laying around. A little bit of salt. We're using sea salt, but you can use any other form of salt, whichever one you have on hand. And then active dry yeast, which technically you don't need if you have a sourdough starter, but the yeast makes your bread rise faster and it rises a lot more. So if that's your preference, then I recommend using yeast. So yeah, we're kind of going to get into that and show you how to do it. First thing you're going to do is you're going to put 3 cups of all-purpose flour into your bowl. Because technically you can do 3.5 cups depending how much water your starter is. So mine's because mine's full hydration, equal parts water, equal parts flour. It's pretty liquidy compared to other consistent starters.
Look at that, you can see it.
Yeah, you can have different consistencies if you use more flour than water. So because my starter is pretty liquidy, we're gonna put 3.5 cups of flour in so that it's not too sticky when we're doing it.
Yes, but the starter that we made in our previous recipe would be just 3 cups of flour just because it's a little bit drier. So yeah, just be aware of how great your starter looks.
So now that we have the 3.5 cups-ish of all-purpose flour, we're gonna put 1 cup of starter next.
Let's do it.
Look at Delilah.
She smells really great.
Great. Okay, now that we have a cup of your sourdough starter in here, we're going to also add a cup of water. If you really want to be specific, lukewarm water is the best suggestion. You can put it in cold water too, just make sure it's not too hot. We also have 1/4 cup, but it's kind of just a suggestion depending if you see your dough is really dry, you could put in a little bit of water, mix it up. But it's kind of just a suggestion for now. Now we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of your active dry yeast, which is pretty important. Like I said, if you want your bread to rise quicker or just rise a lot more and become pretty fluffy, dry yeast is really great for that. But it's also not completely necessary, but I recommend it. Now that you have all of your ingredients in your bowl, we're going to mix it all together now.
Yes.
So that it starts to create your bread dough. So now that we've kind of got our dough going, we're going to knead the dough and mix it with our hands to actually form like a circular dough shape. And we're going to knead that for about 5 minutes. So now that this is kind of getting the dough going in the bowl, is now when we can start really kneading it. And you can plop it on your any kind of countertop, table of any kind. Just make sure you put some flour down first. As you can see, Liz's hands are really sticky. This is the downside of kneading it with your hands. If you have a KitchenAid, those are really nice, especially for this part because the dough can get really sticky. If you have a KitchenAid, you're lucky, that's really nice. But on the assumption that not all of you have KitchenAids, we're gonna show you how to knead it with your hands instead. But yeah, this is my least favorite part. Well, it's fun, but your hand gets sticky. So we're gonna plop it. And so for kneading, if you don't know how to knead dough, what you do is you're going to kind of grab the section away from you, fold it over the top, and then push it in with the heel of your hand. This gets out all those air bubbles and kind of just mixes the dough better together. Kind of rotate it as you go, pull it towards you, flatten it out. You'll see it start to smooth out as we go. So we're gonna knead this for about 5 minutes. Okay, so now that you've kneaded your dough, you're going to put it back in your bowl or container, and you're going to cover it with a towel, tin foil, saran wrap, whatever you see fits, and you're gonna let it rise for about 20 minutes.
After our bread has rested for 20 minutes.
Now you're gonna add 2 teaspoons of salt to your dough, and then you're just gonna knead the salt, get it all mixed into the dough. Now the dough is going to get really smooth once you mix all the salt together, and so it won't be as sticky.
Okay, I'm gonna do it.
And you're gonna do this for about 5 more minutes, then you're gonna let it rest again. Yeah, so now you can kind of see it's not sticking to the table as much and is starting to form a more smoother dough. So now that you've kneaded the salt in for about 5 minutes, you're gonna take your dough, kind of tuck that dough under, and you're gonna place it in your bowl and let it rest for about 3 hours. I'd let it rest for more until it doubles in size. And we're gonna cover it with a towel, tin foil, or saran wrap, whatever you did previously. And we're gonna let that rise for about 3 hours.
Welcome back. After 3 hours of letting our dough rise, it's looking pretty good. We've got our air bubbles forming over here, which you can see. And she's ready to go. Yeah, so the next step you're gonna do is first to wash your hands, and then we're going to take a little bit of butter and you're gonna kind of just rub it on your pan. But you just wanna kind of grease it on the sides. And now we're going to shape the dough into little roll forms before letting it rise again for another 3 hours. This is the best part. Like this much?
Yeah. You can really shape it to whatever size you want. I kind of just tuck the edges under it so it's like a little flat. And you're just gonna place it in your pan. You're just gonna keep doing that until all the dough is gone. I'm gonna space them out a little bit.
Here we go, buddy.
Great. So now you have your tray of rolls now in there. Cover this with a towel, saran wrap, tin foil again, and let it rise for another 3 hours in here before putting it in the oven.
Yay!
After 3 hours of letting the rolls rest and rise, this is what you'll get. Now we did this in kind of colder temperatures, so they're a little flat. If you put it in a warm space, they should rise a lot better. But this is what we've got so far. And now we're going to put it in the oven at 450 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for about 12 minutes. Now, after the first 12 minutes, you're gonna put some butter on each roll just to get them crispier.
They're ready to go back in, another 12 minutes.
Yep. Thanks for watching us make dinner rolls. I hope you enjoy them.
They're delicious.
So good.